Wow, tough act to follow. Rana Dugubati and Tequila, right? So please bear with me. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandeep Cashyap. I'm a part of Google Cloud in India. Very privileged to be standing here in front of you to share some of my experiences. So I have the privilege of working with some of the very early and emerging startups in the country, and every day get an experience of a lot of innovation that is being built in the country, problems that are being solved for India at scale, at depth, which makes our lives very interesting. So today, I'm going to spend a very short amount of time in talking of the art of possible with cloud and specifically AI when it comes to Google Cloud. I know there are a lot of slides and I won't get into all the details, but for me, I think stories always resonate very well. And let me start with a story. So as a part of what I do, I walk into customers' offices and try to understand what they do. And every day is a new story or a new use case that I come across, right? And some of them are brilliant. So like that, I actually walked into one customer's office in Chennai who's been on the Google Cloud platform. Very interesting sort of work that's being done in a very, very traditional space. You always think AI is something which is cutting edge, with a lot of multimodal stuff, with generating content and stuff, which you'd expect, right? But they're using AI in a very traditional industry like agriculture, okay? So what this startup does is, if you understand the agrarian sector in the country, if anybody wants to get cattle, and start a business using cattle and dairy farming. There was no mechanism for the banking sector to identify cattle as something which is different from an agrarian loan. So the NPAs that they had, the risk factors that they had, the underwriting that they used to do for cattle was same like a piece of agricultural land, right? Or if you're getting funding for, let's say, buying seeds and stuff like that. But in reality, that's a very different business. The biggest problem that they had was, how do you uniquely identify cattle, right? If as a human being, I go to take loans in the market, there is a very unique way to identify me. There's an Aadhaar card, there's a fingerprint, there are a bunch of different things which identify me as a unique entity, get my credit worthiness and get me a loan. How do you do it for cows or buffalo, right? So they started innovating and trying to figure out how do you uniquely identify cattle. And I had no clue about this. Just like we have fingerprints, which makes us very unique. If you've looked at the snout or the nose of the cattle, right, they have a dotted pattern, right? Apparently, this pattern is unique to every cow or every buffalo. So what they do, they've developed ML models where they can take a picture of the nose and uniquely identify the animal. That completely now lets them create a unique asset which could be uniquely identified, which was a big problem in the industry. Now, the second thing that they've done is, using similar technology, they go and take a photo of the udders of the cow, right? And based on historical data and knowledge, they actually, just by taking 3 or 4 photos of the cow, determine its health, the region, they can build a cash flow of how much milk this cow is going to generate, and therefore how much cash this farmer is going to generate over the next 4 years, right? You not only uniquely identified cattle now, but you also have a mechanism to figure out separate cash flow, which has got nothing to do with the agricultural land, right? And they took it to market in some of the states, and phenomenal transformation in the way how farmers are looking at it and how banks are looking at it. Now, agricultural loans, which had NPAs like 10, 12%, and animal husbandry loans now which are getting generated, you have NPAs as low as 1% because of this. Now, banks are able to say that clearly this is an identified cattle and I see a cash flow, therefore I can give you loans. The rate at which some of these loans could be obtained by the farmers have also come down drastically, right? They've gone live with 4 states in the country, and they plan to take this across the world, first in India and across the world. So just sharing a small glimpse of how innovation with AI and technology, even in the most traditional spaces, could really disrupt a market. So imagine the art of possible. And for me, as somebody who works very closely with technology and the startup community, it's fantastic to see such things come to life, and for us to be a part of that. So Generally, if you look at any organization, all of you, I'm sure as a part of your companies, be it a startup, be it an enterprise, be it a government entity, all of you have plans in terms of what you would want to do and integrate AI into your applications, into your workflows, into what you're offering as a company, right? Um, but the biggest challenge that we're seeing when we talk to companies like this, although the plans are very aggressive, the implementation of that is running into some headwinds, right? How do you integrate this into your core business stack, right? What is good to have versus what is absolutely necessary? Have we sort of identified the right use case to have this deployed? Once I have it deployed, is this going to scale, right? So there are a bunch of different challenges that we're definitely seeing in the market, which is coming in the way of people achieving some of these dreams, right? Like I told, the first thing, because you work with a lot of data and a lot of scale, first thing people are trying to solve is this something which is scalable, right? The second thing is, it is probably when you started looking at cloud 10, 12 years ago, and there were a lot of cloud technologies out there, you used to hear this term called server sprawl, right? There are so many instances launched and so many servers launched. You don't know who's utilizing what till there was some governance model in place. You're also seeing similarly what is called model sprawl right now. There are so many models out there, and the rate at which some of the newer versions for each of these models are coming out, it is becoming extremely difficult to keep track of them, to identify which model is best for what use case, which version to use, what is the efficacy, what is the accuracy, what is the hallucination. So it's the whole landscape is becoming quite complicated, and that's something that companies are struggling with. And the biggest worry which is there, right? Well, probably people started with cloud 12 years ago. They were wondering about security. Similar sort of fears when it comes to AI in terms of security. More importantly, the legality of it. Where is this data getting sourced from? What is going to be my legal compliance fallback for using some of these technologies? So while technology in itself could be quite exciting and what you can land with, some of these real world problems are coming in the way of how startups are actually doing this. So if we sort of summarize and break it down into buckets, these are what we call the three major problem areas, right? How do I build something that's scalable? How do I have the flexibility to go and pick and choose what I want? And how do I build something on which I can trust, my customers can trust, and I don't land into complexity at a later point in time. And that's been Google's approach of looking at how we offer AI solutions and services, which is a unified platform that sort of bridges all three areas. And I'll get into the details of all these three in terms of how Google is actually offering these solutions. And what I'll do is look at some real world examples like the one that I just gave, and look at scale, flexibility, and trust in a consumer or a customer sort of a situation. Before that, just to give background, somebody was asking a question in terms of how you're using AI in your daily life. How many of you are using Gmail on a personal or in your companies? Yeah, a lot of you, right? So that could be a very first point where you'll get to experience AI. The way Google is doing this is multiple, right? One is we have multiple products. For example, Google has 6 products that over 1 billion people use each of these products, right? So we're building a lot of AI into the products themselves. And obviously on the enterprise side, we're giving platforms and availability for people to go ahead and build their own models and deployments. In Gmail, for example, you can take, if you're using Gmeet, Google Meet, you can have fantastic summarization of the entire call in terms of who told what. At the end of the call, you can get a wonderful action item based response, and you can actually convert that into an email. There are people, let's say, if you're in a sales meeting, you have this discussion, you're doing it to the customer, you can actually go ahead and integrate that with things like your backend Salesforce, where it goes and gets attached to whoever the customer was with whom you were having this conversation. If you've started using Drive, which is documents and Excel sheets, a lot of summarization is available out of the box for you. And if you're looking to search and summarize content, for example, we are working with a legal organization that has contracts and documents, legal documents in petabytes, right? For them to A, search and B, summarize at that scale becomes a massive issue, right? So now with this native integration of AI into things like Google Meet, it's a phenomenal opportunity for you to experience AI at your fingertips, be it on your personal front or even on your enterprise side. Similarly, people who are using Android and you use Gemini Assist on your phones, it's a phenomenal tool in terms of what you can do with Gemini. It's a very interactive, multimodal sort of a platform, be it images, voice, text, and it'll respond to you in multiple ways. If you've read the recent news, Apple has signed a massive partnerships with Google recently to take Gemini into all their iPhones and other devices, which you'll see it coming out very quickly. So what is that we do? Because we've got a long legacy of using AI before AI became this shiny new object today. A lot of fundamental model level stuff was built at a company called DeepMind. This is a company that Google actually purchased and integrated into our AI strategy. So everything within Google is actually stemming out of research that is coming out of DeepMind. We even had DeepMind's founder come down to Bangalore last year. It was a phenomenal discussion that we had with a lot of customers. The other advantage that we're getting is we are able to test this out at scale. Like I told, over 6 products that have a billion users each. And some of the things that we're trying to do is at scale phenomenal. For example, I don't know how many of you have heard, there's this company called Waymo in the US. It's a part of Google. It's one of the fastest growing businesses within the Alphabet ecosystem. So Waymo is a self-driving car. So you can, if you actually go to the US and go to SF, you can hire a Waymo vehicle like an Uber. It'll not have a driver and it'll completely drive on its own till your final destination, right? And the rate at which some of these rides are getting done, the amount of data that is getting generated, the scale at which we are operating is phenomenal, right? So we're able to collect a lot of these data points and build models for you based on some of the data which is there, be it on the B2C application side or some of the other things that Alphabet is doing, be it Maps, be it Waymo, now with things like Google Pay within India. So let's look at each of these components, which are problem areas. The first one I told is how do you actually scale AI to a massive level, right? And across models or LLMs that you have of your own, or even if you choose to use Gemini, which is Google's flagship model, right? One of the things that we've done is, along with giving you the base level infrastructure, which is GPUs, and Google's own platform, which is called TPUs, and as customers you can choose either. The availability of chipsets has been sort of democratized now, and if you have your own models to run, what we offer is an ML operations and management platform called Vertex, which actually lets you deploy any of these models. If you have data, you can store it on Google GCS and stream data into any of your models, and be it either in BigQuery or just the Google storage that you have. And you can optimize it for the sort of operation that you would want to conduct on this, and the sort of queries or use cases that you have from a deployment standpoint. And because a lot of these tools are open source by nature, it sort of doesn't lock you into any of the platforms. Today, if you want to run it on the Google platform on GPUs, you can do it. Tomorrow, if you want to move it somewhere else, it gives you the absolute flexibility, but to do it at scale. So Google also lets you integrate a lot of different data sources, which is actually one of the secret sauces when it comes to working with scale. How do you get this data? So either as an organization, you have this data available with you, or what we've seen in multiple cases, people actually create synthetic data. And we do have mechanisms that actually support you to go create data at scale to train your models and then land into inferencing. It completely handles your entire MLOps pipelines. So you don't actually need to have a massive data science team if you're a startup and just wanting to get started. So a fantastic example for this is Shopify. There's been an explosion of D2C brands in the country. So we've been working with Shopify on ensuring that a lot of these brands who want to start online, who want to start e-commerce platforms, through Shopify, they have the availability and choice to go get started from an AI standpoint. And what Shopify is really doing is really cutting down the time needed for a lot of these merchants to go online. Now, be it stuff like cataloging that was taking a lot of time to generate some of these images, to do sanity checks. They've developed models where you can very quickly look at is it adhering to certain standards for online decorum, or how a project is, how a product is actually showcased. Multiple checkpoints which are built into some of these workflows, and really lets D2C organizations very quickly get onto the marketplace and push products into the market very quickly, right? They're also sort of exposing a lot of analytics to their end customers as a part of this platform. So you can actually break down into SKU level data, geo level data, pin code level data, into a lot of very interesting stuff and data that they're offering as a platform. So tomorrow, if you want to use Shopify and you want to launch in a particular geo, for example, and say in this particular pin code, what is the most selling SKU brand, let's say in the men's apparel section, right? So they can actually drill down to that level to give you insights and help you as a D2C organization which is trying to take your e-commerce products online very quickly to the market. Today, if you ask me, the biggest problem is figuring out which model to use where. There is Gemini, there is ChatGPT, there is Grok, which is out there, there is Anthropic, there's Llama, there is DeepSeek that hit the market, and you can build your own stuff as well, right? So typically what customers figure out is for every use case, a different model works better, right? So it becomes very complicated to figure out how do you deploy, and you don't want to sort of get attached to a model. So what Google actually offers is something called the Model Garden. And the Model Garden is really a platform where you can seamlessly go ahead and deploy any of these solutions from any of the open source providers or Google's own models, or you can bring your own model. In fact, we have a lot of very interesting companies in India and globally who are building their own models. And you can actually put it up for sale on Model Garden. For example, I'm sure you would have heard of companies like Sarvam, which are building Indic LLMs. We have companies like CoreOver, which are trying to solve the same thing. They're building their own LLMs, which are India specific. And all those models now are available on the Model Garden for you to go ahead and consume, right? And that gives you the flexibility from a choice standpoint. And we keep updating the latest versions, integrations, which makes your entire MLOps quite seamless. So there are multiple such customers. There's a global example, which is Snapchat, which is using multimodal capabilities to interact with a lot of their end consumers on the Google platform, and seeing some phenomenal results. Locally in India, we've started working with a lot of very interesting startups. For example, Meesho came out with a very detailed case study on how they're using AI on the Model Garden of GCP to look at how do you do sari draping, right? And how do you drape saris based on the material, based on the length, based on the color on the mannequins. And all this was actually being done physically, which is completely moved over to a model where you can do this on AI. And they're able to get better accuracy and quicker deployments when it comes to how they were traditionally doing it before. The biggest advantage here is the multimodal nature of these models, which means that you can give a text and generate an image. It could be a voice that you're generating and get text. It could be a video input, and then you're trying to get information out. The LLM really understands multiple of these modes and is able to provide any sort of output that you're looking at. In India, we are working with a health tech company which is building a platform globally for doctors, because a lot of doctors across the world, when they're looking at patients, they're actually talking or diagnosing the patient, and they're talking to a device. Now, if you look at standard LLMs, it doesn't really understand doctor speak, right? Which means that if somebody says 10 mg of ibuprofen, right? So probably the regular LLMs actually won't catch this. So they were actually looking to build models which understands medical language, medical lingo, and convert that to text at scale. They're probably working with almost 60,000 doctors today globally. And they actually had a accuracy issue where they wanted word error rates to be very, very low, right? You can't have a situation where you have two medicines which sound very similar, and if the doctor says something and the model then uses something else, right? So it becomes a huge issue. So that's another fantastic use case where we've seen multimodal inputs and people using Model Garden or some of the models which are available on Gemini outright to go ahead and do some of these deployments. Yeah, so the last issue that I spoke about is one of the biggest thing that needs to be addressed, right? Which is how secure are some of these models that I'm using? More importantly, what is the compliance impact that I'm going to potentially face? How do I ensure that it's responsible in the way it has been developed and implemented? So I think this is one of the biggest challenges that enterprises have today in terms of how they go ahead and use AI. It's not really a technical limitation, it's what follows, right? I think one of the advantages that you get with Google is the data that has been sourced is very clean, and there is never any question in terms of the legality of the data that has been sourced. And therefore, even if you're using synthetic data on top of it, you're never really in the dark in that area. And if you are in an industry that is highly regulated and you want to have complete control of the data, the access, and the outputs, I think the enterprise grade security that comes along with some of these frameworks really makes it useful. To a point where you can actually go ahead and use some of these models to make it the core of what you're trying to do as a business as well. For example, I think in India, we have multiple customers. So Puma is one such customer who's using our models to do a lot of core development of image generation into their e-commerce portal. Probably something that's more well-known and interesting. India's fastest growing prosumer AI company, which is called InVideo, and we're working very closely with them. I think InVideo, over a short period of 18 months, generated 25-30 million of revenue out of nowhere. If you've not read about InVideo, I would strongly suggest go have a read. It's one of the platforms which is a platform for content creators to generate videos. So you just need to go type in text. Now they're getting into voice as well, and have both short form and long form videos being created based on the inputs that you're given. Very interesting sort of use case. So they're working with content creators, now they're working with brands. So video generation is pretty simple, right? And they're using the core Gemini 2.0 models, both on Flash and 1.5 Pro. And the business is really transformed over a 2-year period, right? And they're able to build a business like this because they have that absolute confidence that the image generation which has happened, the video generation which has happened, has come from really clean sources, and they don't have to worry about taking it into the market. So I just want to sort of summarize saying that it doesn't really matter what your vertical or what your use case is. There are multiple possibilities available in terms of what you can really do. And we are really more than glad to help any of you get started on your journey. And if there's anything specific that you want to do from a technology standpoint, or have any concerns, we do have a booth here, and we have some of our technical friends who can sort of help address any of the queries that you have. Just want to close with what we are doing to help the larger startup community, Google Cloud specifically, and the larger Google ecosystem. I think we have a wonderful view of the really burgeoning startup ecosystem in the country, both from the front end and back end standpoint. Some of our colleagues in, let's say, the front end part, which is be it on Play Store or Android or some of the ads teams that we have, they run what is called the AI Apps Academy. So if you're a young early stage startup, do look out for this. There is a lot of help, guidance, mentorship that is available as a part of the Apps Academy. On the other end, we actually have been running what is called the Google Accelerator for the past 8 years. It was one of the first accelerators that Google launched globally, and now we have it across the world. We have a cohort of probably 20 startups that get selected in each of the batches. And for the last 2 times, we've been running AI-specific cohorts with some wonderful companies coming out there. What we also do is we partner with a lot of organizations, be it venture capitalists, accelerators, incubators, government bodies. So if you're working with any of these folks, we do have programs available where we support a lot of startups as a part of this larger engagement. We've also recently started, if you're a B2B organization and looking to sell into the market, we've started a program where we actually help you not just deploy your applications on the cloud, but also look at how do you take your products to the market. So if you want to understand more, especially about the program that we run called Google for Startups, where there are technical sessions available for you, where there is a bunch of help available in the form of support or architecture, and more importantly, we do offer Google Cloud credits as a part of the program, and you can get started with the deployment of your applications, your tests, and any production use cases that you may have. It's a fantastic way to get started, and we have a lot of customers who are sort of utilizing this. We have a specific AI tier as well, where you get access to GPUs, TPUs, and a bunch of other infrastructure which is out there. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what is out there and what are some of the challenges that customers are facing, and how we're working with very interesting startups and enterprises. So thank you so much for your time. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
Hi, my name is Vinita. I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
So basically, I want to understand that I had once, tried ChatGPT
Yeah.
for understanding few judgments on a particular subject. So what I found out was that in a judgment, usually it is the arguments from both sides, and then judge does the analysis and finally gives the judgment. So in ChatGPT, I found that certain things were stated which were not even said in the judgment. It was kind of hallucination which happened that application was doing. So do you also work on those kind of areas, or have any particular model which works on?
Yes, absolutely we do. And there are a couple of different ways of looking at this. One is a lot of use cases that people are trying to do, be it ChatGPT or some of the open versions which are there for, be it Gemini or any of the other products, right? These are B2C versions that you're using. If it is an enterprise setting that you want to use within a company, a lot of these tools are available with enterprise versions, where you have a lot more control of the data that goes in. And you can also, if you're in a specific vertical, I gave the healthcare example, right? Where it was not just an open model that they were using, because it was very specific to healthcare and those terms. You're able to train the data which is there, and make it a lot more effective to how you would want it in your particular domain. So similarly, in the legal world as well, there are LLMs where people are looking at legal frameworks specifically and building those as vertical LLMs. But even if you don't want to use that, I would say first use it in an enterprise setting where you have a lot more control of the data. And more importantly, you're able to train and ground the data yourself much better. over a period of time. Some of these B2C models can, and they will look at data from just like the internet, right? So probably that's not the best use in a company or an enterprise setting. But there are multiple such customers in the legal world who are actually utilizing this after they've trained and used their own data specific to the
So
vertical.
you're presently also working on these models in the legal industry as well?
So there are companies that are building this for a specific vertical. For example, quite recently there was a company called Spot Draft, which raised almost $20 million. And they're looking to build this specifically for the legal industry. They're using generic open source models and build a legal specific model on top. So you have to evaluate such companies who understand legal contracts a lot more. Cool. I think in the interest of time, I'll just stop here. I'm available outside in case anybody has questions. Thank you so much.